Hello and welcome to Rockies Recap, a part of the Rockies Now podcast network. My name is Steven. I am back home right there as co-host Tom. Um, we just witnessed one of the weirdest games in Rockies history, at the, last few hours, I guess. I mean, it was a long, long game. I mean, me and Tom, we were sending texts back and forth and we talked about, the SpongeBob meme where it's like 5 hours later, and it was one of those games. I mean, the Rockies won, great, but uh, this both teams are bad, but the Rockies they almost got swept by the White Sox, and the White Sox are having a year kind of like the Rockies. The White Sox are a little bit worse by record, but you're looking at two teams that are kind of on the same playing field, I guess, in terms of just where they are at right now. But Tom, how are you doing? You went to the game yesterday, so tell you how you doing and your interactions at the game yesterday and how all that went.
Well, it was a little hot, that's for sure.
Yeah,
It was the late 80s, low 90s day, but there was some swirls of breezes shuffling through the stadium, so it was somewhat tolerable at times and a bit of an overcast. Um, First of all, I did mention this on the recap for the Astros. I did not get it. We did not decide to purchase one of those campfire milkshakes to see what all the hype was about. But my wife and I talked about next time we go, if it's a night game, maybe it's a better day when we're feeling up to it. We'll probably try one of those, and then I'll give you a review if it's worth the hype or not. But overall, I was still surprised. People have been harking for the last year and a half about how bad the parking situation is at Guarantee Rate Field. We had no problems, got into Lot F. There was not a big issue. Just, yeah, I don't know what all the fuss people have made about that at the ballpark of that. But all in all, it was a good experience, except for the fact that, a couple of jackaloons in left. We were sitting, first of all, in the left field bleachers right behind the White Sox bullpen, about 10 rows up. There were a couple of jackaloons who were harking at Nolan Jones in left field. Someone called him a bum. Someone called him this, and he didn't make it. Somewhat, some doofus actually made fun of his haircut because he's kind of got the little short on the sides going back the edge. Someone actually poked fun at I just kind of looked over at the guy. I thought, whatever.
yeah,
And so I obviously didn't give him a dirty look or say anything because I don't want to invite trouble into me. So that's just like it just is weird when people
yeah,
heckle each other. And not that I haven't seen it before. I mean, it's happened time and time again, but it's just you're gonna have no matter what stadium you go to, you're gonna have get morons like that who do that kind of stuff. But all in all, it was an enjoyable experience. There were a lot of home runs in this game, a lot.
yeah.
Let me just make sure I double check. In that game, White Sox had 4 and Rockies had 1, 2. Yeah, Jones and Rogers. So all in all, it was last point I'll make. Which one was it? It was Rogers' home run landed in the bullpen in about 30 rows in front of me. So, obviously, as you point, I can't catch it. I'm not Mr. Fantastic. I can't extend my arm out there. And who was Paul DeYoung's homer was about 3 rows in front of me, and the person who was going to catch it missed it, and it bounced down away
Yeah,
from me. So I had no chance to go for it. So
yeah.
all in all, it was enjoyable. I had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I remember last year there were people, and it was actually kind of funny thing. Like last year when I went to the Rockies game, it was actually against the White Sox, your White Sox, and there wasn't any hecklers. I mean, I'll be honest, Rockies fans are actually really nice. We don't have a whole
Mhm.
lot of hecklers because when I went to the game, I was sitting in left field, not too far. I was kind of in the middle of the left field bleachers at Coors Field, and Rockies fans. I mean, again, I could have, maybe I didn't hear as much or I didn't really pay attention, but I didn't hear any Rockies fans heckle the opposing players. If there is, maybe a very little, but I mean, it's every single game you have hecklers. Like almost every single baseball game in the history of mankind, there's always been hecklers. So I mean, Nolan, he's heard that thousands of times, I'm sure, even when he was with the Guardians organization and all that. So he's used to that. But yeah, so start the series. I mean, I told Tom, that hey, maybe the Rockies could, find their footing a little bit. They're going into a series that definitely is winnable, definitely potentially sweepable, if that's a word. And I was like, hey, maybe the Rockies can, play a little bit better baseball, against a team that's has the worst team record in baseball. And game one, it proved that the Rockies offense is not good at all right now. A lot of undisciplined swings and at bats, and um, it it was just ugly. And the pitching wasn't bad necessarily. It was just like missed opportunities and just not good competitive at bats on the offensive side. And as we posted today on our Instagram story, the Rockies, well, this is before the game ended, but the Rockies had, what was it, 22 hits in 45 innings. That is atrocious. That's horrible. That's a stat you do not want to have. That's a big, big no-no. So we get it. The offense has been bad, but game one wasn't bad, but it was just like really like, and yeah, the Rockies, they have not played well on the road this year, but they're coming off of two losses in Houston, which was not fun. I mean, game one was actually not a bad game considering what happened in the first inning. The Rockies pitching was great after that first inning in Houston. Then game two, it's just like there was no fight. The offense was bad. The pitching wasn't good. Of course, the Astros are kind of on a nice run right now. But in the series, I was like, you know what, the Rockies, they got to get at least 2 wins here. And then game two happened. Nice start. Rogers gets a home run. Nolan Jones gets a home run. I think his home run was absolutely crushed, even though it didn't go far. It went into the Rockies bullpen, but it was, I think, 111 off the bat. So that was great to see his third home run of the year. And then really hell broke loose for the Rockies. 11 runs. Of course, Riley Pine gave up, I believe, that home run. Or he came in a little bit. He did get a strikeout. I think that was his first career strikeout, so that's great. It was just like things just fell apart, and you got home runs from the White Sox from a bunch of guys. I think Corey Lee got a home run. Luis Robert got a home run. I mean, it's just like they have home run guys on that White Sox team. It's just that they're power hitters, and if they don't hit for home runs, they usually strike out or ground out, whatever. But they were just ran through a sawmill in game two. It was just not fun. It was just the Rockies at that point in time. They were just embarrassing themselves at that point. And then today it was like, okay, Crochet, he's a good left-handed pitcher, lefty battle. And I know you talked about it earlier, how, watch out for game three, which, we definitely watched the game and we saw what happened, and a crazy game as it was, but it was a good game. I mean, Freeland was pitching fantastic, despite that home run he gave up. He pitched great. He's been pitching a lot better. But really, I want to say a big shout out to Brenton Doyle. Two Gold Glove plays today. I mean, the one in the 13th inning, I think, was just wow. Like I thought for sure that was going to be the walk off. Fam hit it on the button. It was a line drive. I'm like, yeah, that's game. Doyle somehow is able to cover center field so well, and he's been able to do that ever since he's come up, and even through the minor leagues. He won a Gold Glove, I think, a few years ago in the minors, but Doyle somehow caught that. That was incredible. But it was just like, please, can somebody just at this point, I was just like, can somebody just win the game or end the game? Like, I don't care if the White Sox win or Rockies win, just end the game, because I think I'm not 100% certain, but I think I saw somewhere on Twitter that I think this was the longest game in terms of innings for the new extra inning rule, because a few years ago they changed the original rule to where nobody was on base, and now you have the runner at second base, the ghost runner rule, or the California rule, as they call it. But it was just like, can somebody please score? Because the Rockies offense all game long, they just weren't clicking. A lot of strikeouts, 20 strikeouts at the end of the day. Nolan Jones struck out 5 times. That's very not good to see. Let's just say that simply. But the Rockies, they were able to win 5-4. Good pitching from the bullpen. Tyler Kinley looked good. But the only issues that, the Rockies had to go into their bullpen pretty deep. Jalen Peaks, I think Peaks did okay, even though he kind of gave up the game there early in the extras. But yeah, I mean, the bullpen wasn't horrible, but it was just like one of those games. It's just like, you're watching the two worst teams in baseball, but you know what? We'll take the win. But it goes to show you that these two teams are in the middle, smack dab in the middle of the rebuild right now, and it's not fun for the fans for both teams, but we'll take it. But yeah, it was a weird, ugly series for the Rockies, and I'm just happy that we didn't get swept by the White Sox, of course. And here's the thing for you, because you know like you're a fan of both teams, so technically you won the series. I mean, either way. I mean, either a Rockies fan or a White Sox fan. So but yeah, it was a weird series, but it's just like, man, it sucks. But yeah, it was just wow. And of course, in my mind when the game was going on, especially in the extra innings, I had the Jeopardy theme in my mind, and so it was one of those days.
No, definitely. At some point, I did have, of course, the same thing with the SpongeBob meme going, "Five is little." No, it's good. But anyway, no, it was true. Going into the series, you could say to me about me is that, I'd win either way. I don't necessarily see it that way, considering how bad both teams are doing.
Yeah.
I would like to see them do this against winning teams and try and spoil somebody's day, particularly the Dodgers or the Padres,
Yeah.
or for the White Sox case, the Guardians and the Royals. But those are four other teams that are just in a stratosphere at this point. Not just in terms, well, Guardians and have a low-ish payroll, but still, either way, I'm talking in
Mhm.
terms of talent. It was no, it was good. I especially also I want to make light, of course, Luis Robert had a pretty amazing day. The thing about these two teams, they have two Gold Glove defensive center fielders playing for them. And it's
Mhm.
just the only issue is that I just hated there was too many strikeouts this series on both
Yeah.
sides. The White Sox weren't exactly swinging the bat well. I don't believe anybody had. I think there was one hat trick for the White Sox. I don't know. It wasn't. That was actually yes. Robert had a hat trick in game, even though he had a home run at the game I was at. I remember he did have trouble swinging the bat in game 3. Quantrill, the game I was at, he wasn't throwing too many bad pitches. It's just when he did have mistakes, the White Sox took advantage from him and took him out. And as you point out, both lineups have a lot of power. It's just the White Sox in this series showed more of it.
Mhm.
It was good to see Aaron Schunk get a pinch hit at the end of the game that I was at. I don't know why Bud Black pinch hit Montero for Rogers, who was having a great game there outside of the home run. He was 2 for he was 2 for 2 with a walk. So I don't know. I was confused when Montero came up in the last at bat of the game against Justin Anderson, but he ended up striking out. No surprise.
Mhm.
And of course, with Schunk getting his first start today, it's going to be interesting to see how much he plays. Is he
Yeah.
gonna, granted he can play. He can't play third and second. He can't. Real quick question: he cannot play short, right?
I don't think so. I think he's played third and second base.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what that means with Rogers. He has had a nice year, not a great year. I mean, it's been
Mhm.
nice, nothing to
Yeah.
write home about. It's just,
Yeah.
so it is gonna. But as you and I talked in our pre-show meeting, it's been, with Toglia playing every day there at first or right now. I think he is right now the everyday first baseman, and it was, it just shows that they as we talked about, they gave Montero chances, and with a 570, hold on, let me see, 571 OPS this season with regular playing time, I might note,
Not good enough.
you just gotta
Mhm.
cut bait and move on. And like I
Yeah.
said, Toglia, his batting average, people are saying, oh, it's below the Mendoza line. Well, it's
Mhm.
been going up, 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 slowly but
Yeah.
surely. And he's got an OPS over. Hold on, real quick side comment. Let me just double check. Make sure I give this right here.
Mhm.
It is over. Where is he? 680. So he's close to 700. And again, it's
Yeah.
going up. So
Yeah.
give him the shot. And he's got power in the bat, both from the right side, because he had a home run from the right side the other night. So yeah, all in all, again, it was an enjoyable series considering, you know, I was in the back of my mind, I was hoping that there wouldn't be a sweep because I just didn't want to see
Yeah.
whether it was either side. I didn't want to see either team get swept, so I'm glad
Yeah.
that came true. But
Mhm.
again, today left it to the bill. Both Freeland and Crochet were great, and we just gotta say, Freeland, I think he not only is he had that look on his face, he not only was pitching with kind of, you could say, bad intentions.
Yeah.
I think he's either, I guess he's one, he is 100% healthy, and two, he feels like he's pitching like he's got something to prove, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it was. I'm not saying he's. We've talked about this. Last year. At some point, but he's not going to be the Freeland that we knew in 2018. There's no shot that's going to happen. But he has that competitor in him, and two good starts again. Great to see. But the Rockies, they need a guy like Freeland moving forward in this rebuild. Um, but yeah, when we were talking about Montero and even not Toglia, Trejo, it's sad because and we've gotten some people saying, oh well, finally, and all that, and yeah, it's good for the club in the future, but you do have to realize that these guys are humans that they do this for a job, and you kind of feel bad for them because they won't be around their friends, that the guys that they kind of came up through the minor league system. Not Montero, even though he, kind of, was, I think he was in AAA when he got traded over here. But Trejo, he's been in the Rockies system since he was, young, right? The Rockies, I'm pretty sure drafted him. So you feel for those guys, but at the end of the day, it's business. This is the right move. The Rockies need to focus on guys like Shunk. Of course, we kind of didn't. I don't think we mentioned this on our social medias, but Coco Montez, he's off the team. I think he went to international. I think Japan to play in the league over there. So hats off to him. Thank you to Coco for his time with the Rockies. And at least he was able to get some experience last year up in the big league level. But in Montero, like we've said, he got his playing time. It's not like the Rockies didn't kept him on the bench. No, I mean, like I said, Bryant over the last 3 years, he's been heavily injured to the point where he hasn't played a full year yet, or only I don't think he's even played a half a season yet. I mean, last year he played, I think, 80 games, but Montero and Toglia, they got in their playing time, and the Rockies chose Toglia over Montero. And again, no offense to Trejo or Montero, but I really don't see Trejo uh, you know, being a starting second baseman for any of the 30 teams in baseball. He might be a backup at best, but I really don't see Trejo, being a big league second baseman. I think he'll most likely, if he does sign somewhere else, he'll probably be in AA, AAA, that sort of thing as a second baseman. Montero, same thing. Again, no offense to any of these guys. It's just that they just their numbers weren't that great. I mean, again, it's just, in Montero, in our notes, Tom points out 204 games played for the Rockies for Montero. So Montero played a bunch of games. Again, it wasn't, kind of, if you look at his numbers in a 162 game season, they're not great. They're not really good, and it's a guy that, that had potential coming up through the Cardinal system, but again, he wasn't a top prospect for them by any means, and we already know that that trade, Arenado trade was kind of lopsided, right? And Montero, of course, wasn't the prize pot, prospect that they got. It was Gomber, but yeah, it stinks to see that somebody has to lose their job, but again, it's a part of the business. Toglia has been looking really, really good, and I feel like he's getting better at bats, and he has um, a tenacity in him to be like, I want to be I want to be the first baseman. And I think he's matured, heavily ever since he, I would actually go and say, ever since this past off season, and last year we were like, what, maybe the Rockies should DFA him because, he just wasn't performing well. And then of course, earlier this year, he had a nice start and then he kind of cooled off. The Rockies sent him back down, but then ever since he's come up, Toglia has actually had he's been getting on base. He's been contributing pretty well for the team. And by the way, Chris Bryant, he has played 146 games for the Rockies, and that's 3 years. 146 games in 3 years. So yeah, not a single full season for Chris. And I think we mentioned this before we started. Um, if Chris Bryant, gets injured one more time or has another season-ending injury either next year or whenever, I think he's getting the door. I think the Rockies, and like you said, it's all a matter of when Dick Monfort will say, you know what, it's time to let him go, or Bill Schmidt approaches Dick Monfort and say, hey, uh, we made a mistake, in signing Chris Bryant. Even though I love KB, I think a lot of us love KB, but it just hasn't worked out. And the Rockies, they need to focus on you know playing the young kids or have somebody else play first base or DH. And at this point, playing Chris Bryant might not be the best for this team, in this rebuild because you got to focus on look at Michael Toglia or Hunter Goodman. You want to give those two guys at bats, and those two guys, yeah, their average isn't pretty, but they've shown that they have power. They can be, clutch for this team. Um, but yeah, going back to Montero and Trejo, feel for those guys. But again, it's a part of the game. It's part of the business. And the Rockies, they have to move things forward in this rebuild. And it's not going to be easy, but it has to happen.
Yeah, something I found out about Montero last year. Going to what the notes I talked about the number of games played. Last year he played 85 games and he had an OPS of 716 and OPS plus of 84. That's below league average in terms of what you like out of an everyday player. But just the fact that in regular playing time this year, obviously, of course, less games, 66, but he had a stretch of regular playing time with an OPS of only 573 and an OPS plus of 57. He basically, considering They even though he's 25 years old, and you could say they're trying to have a youth movement here. Montero, obviously, with the power in his back. Again, real quick, looking at his last 7 games, he's only batting 192, but he's getting on base a much higher in terms of the 241. Again, it's not. I'm not saying 241 is a good on base percentage, but given where his batting average is, it's good. It is pretty good. He is in his last 15 games, he is hitting 224 with a 270 on base. But the thing is, he's slugging over 500. He's got 5 home runs in the last 15 games and three in his last 7. So he is showing, of course, the power that we all know he has. Now, what kind of batting averages would he have? To my eyes, if he can have that kind of power, especially considering he's a switch hitter, um, the Rockies are going to hopefully have some other guys who can be the batting average guys. That's not what we're going to need. If that's the case, and the roster is constructed correctly, that's not what we're going to need Toglia for. If he can still crush the ball again, both sides of the plate, and hit the clip to the tune of a batting average, let's say, I'll throw out a number here, 235, 240 with a let's say 40, 50 on base percentage. That's a pretty good player, from my opinion, especially considering the fact that he can slug. If he slugs 500, that to me is acceptable. But yeah, so again, it seems with the fact that, like we said, the youth movement with Shunk coming up, Trejo, just, best of luck to him. He was, what was it, I think it's 4 years he played for the Rockies as a backup infielder. I think he played his most games for the Rockies in the season last year with 80 something. I think it was 86, I believe. I can't remember. But again, he had his moments. He had that walk off last year, so that was a fun moment for him. And like I said, Montero, they just said, you know what, here's our guy. We're moving on. Again, not every prospect from every big high profile trade works out. I think there's a laundry list of them. At the end of the day, they decided to move in a different direction. So we'll see how, again, I think we mentioned this in the pre-show meeting, how it's going to be interesting to see how much Shunk plays or where he plays mostly. I mean, he's not going to take Rymack's spot. So is he somewhat going to be interchangeable with Rogers, or is he going to be the backup infielder outside of first base? Because I don't think he can play first base or shortstop. So it'll be interesting to see how much he plays and what position he plays more.
I feel like Shunk is backup at best. Not a knock on him, but he's had good numbers in AAA. It's just that he's not like, oh my goodness, he needs to be starting second base, third base, that sort of thing. But I like how they're giving him a shot. They're giving him some at bats in the big leagues. So like, take a look at Shunk, see what he got. And at this point, I feel like that's the question. Like, what are they going to do? Of course, we've been asking this question for a couple years. What are they going to do with Rogers? That's the thing. And of course, Rogers is, like you said, he's starting to figure it out. He's of course struggled with injuries over the last few years, but I feel like he's starting to figure it out a little bit. He's been able to get those batting averages staying around 260, 270 this year. Yeah, good question. Like, what's Shunk going to be like? How is he going to be a part of this? But also too, like with today's move with Diaz, again, catching, that's another question. And I think we're going to see Diaz get traded very, very soon. I just feel like we're right there. Like, of course, we're only about a month away, if not less than, a little bit more than a month away from the trade deadline. But I'm curious to see, because there's 39 roster spots and one of them is open. So there's one roster spot left. I'm just curious to see who's going to go in that. Of course, I wouldn't be surprised. It probably will be a bullpen arm from AAA or AA or wherever. There's a possibility they could do Drew Romo, because I don't think he's on the 40-man roster. They could add him on there, because let's just say if they trade Diaz, they could add Romo to the 40-man. However, like somebody again, one of our followers DM'd us today, and they were like, well, what about Hunter Goodman? Is he going to be catching? Because, and I agree. I think I'm very intrigued with Hunter Goodman as catcher. Like, he actually has, over the last couple of weeks, he's been starting as a backup catcher behind Stallings when Diaz was injured. Well, now since Diaz is back, and he'll probably get back to the catcher's role in the next day or two. And of course, he just got back. The Rockies just want to be a little bit more careful with him and make sure he doesn't re-injure himself. So, what are they going to do with Romo, like, or Diaz? Of course, the Diaz is going to get traded, but I'm just curious to see if Hunter Goodman could be a potential backup catcher. They could also trade Jacob Stallings because there's always a team that could use an extra catcher, backup catcher, or emergency catcher. Of course, back in the, I'm not sure if they have this anymore, but they used to have, the emergency catcher. Like during COVID, they had like the travel. You'd have a few players that travel just in case if somebody got COVID or if a player wasn't available. Um, Maybe Stallings will be one of those guys. Maybe the Rockies will trade Stallings because again, Stallings has had a really nice year. Comparing to his previous years in his career, Stallings is probably having his best year in his career. So why not maybe consider trading him? I know, there's a lot of us that I would actually kind of like to see not Diaz, Stallings stay just for the experience for Drew Romo kind of mentorship under there. But I don't know. I wouldn't be necessarily totally against trading Stallings. I'm just kind of thinking in my mind of like, I wonder what's going to happen with Goodman. I mean, he's probably going to be DHing occasionally, maybe playing first base when Toglia is having a day off. But um, I'm just curious to see what they're going to do with that final roster spot. It will again, it will likely be a bullpen arm, but I don't know. It's over the next few weeks, we're going to see some interesting stuff, especially with the All Star game, the All Star break. All these trades are, and actually, I think there was a trade today. I think it was a Texas and Tampa. They made a trade today. So I think over the next few weeks, we're going to start seeing trades ramp up. And of course, after the All Star break, then chaos will begin with the trade deadline. So I'm wondering what the Rockies are going to do here, but I like that they're going younger, and that's what they need to do. Go younger, that's the best way to do a rebuild. And um, yeah, as much as we like some of the veteran like Diaz, who I'm gonna miss, he's been such a great catcher for this team over the last few years. But you have to get younger, and that's the only way I feel like this rebuild will progress. In a good way.
The youth movement is upon us.
Yep, finally. Yeah, it just because looking back, it needs to happen, and um, again, we don't want to be long, but it needs to happen. Like the Rockies, they need to make moves that are going to benefit them in the future. Let the young kids play, and they've been doing that. Like I'm not saying that they need to go completely young because we've talked about in the past too that the Rockies they do. I feel like there should be somewhat of a couple guys in the lineup in the roster that are veterans that have had experience like Charlie Blackmon, Jake Cave, Chris Bryant, even though he hasn't played uh, hardly at all this year. But they need a guy like that. But again, at the same time though, you got to go young, and so I'm excited. And I think I feel like the Rockies they're like seeing them DFA, Trejo, and Montero. Yeah, it stinks to see that, but at the same time, though, it's kind of their signal, their I should say their announcement of like, hey, we're doing this, right? Even though they won't admit that they are rebuilding, they're more like retooling, I guess, if that's the word. So hopefully they finally admit that they're rebuilding and that they're going through this process, which I think they have. They just haven't said it yet, or they won't say it. But I don't know. They're just it's kind of weird, but I think we're heading in the right direction. It's a painful process, but as we head in the next series against the Brewers, which will be at Coors Field, it should be fun. 4th of July week is upon us, so it's going to be fun. But the Rockies they got to get the bats going because it's just over the last week or so the offense has been embarrassingly bad, and so that needs to improve as we head into the series with the Brewers. Let me see if I can pull up the game information here on my iPad. Um, oh yeah, just somewhat of a announcement for you all. So we announced this on our Twitter and our Instagram today, and even on Threads. Go check us out on Threads as well. Um, we will be going live in 2 weeks because 2 weeks from today, which is kind of hard to believe, is the draft. And actually, right around now, the draft will be going on in 2 weeks from right now. Tom and I will be going live on YouTube, Instagram, and X. And so if you're watching us on one of those platforms, make sure you subscribe, make sure you're staying tuned because we'll be live. I think we're going to be probably like the first 5 to 10 picks. Of course, we'll be live when the Rockies pick at number 3. So again, make sure you're staying tuned for that. It's going to be fun. Yeah, I can't wait because we've been wanting to do this. It was kind of an idea that we kind of spat out maybe a couple months ago, but it was, now we're really excited about that. So again, stay tuned. It's gonna be a fun time. So tomorrow, The Rockies will be welcoming the Milwaukee Brewers. I believe it's a 4-game series against Milwaukee, who are 50 and 34, leading the National League Central. This is a team that a lot of people actually thought that they were not going to be that good. They were going to be a bottom dweller in the National League Central, but they have proved everybody wrong, or a lot of people wrong. Maybe not everybody, but they look to, you know, to continue winning, and they look really good. Austin Gomber will get the mound tomorrow night. He's 1-5 with a 4.63 ERA. I feel like he's been pitching a lot better this year. Of course, we all know that. And then Bryce Wilson, who's 5-3 on the year, 3.89 ERA for the Brewers. He's had a nice year as well. So, I mean, a lot of young players on this Brewers lineup, and I think that's somewhat what the Rockies should look at and say, hey, you know what, we need to, you know, call up some of these young guys, you know, and kind of replicate the Reds, the Brewers, and those teams. So it's going to be a fun series. Again, if you're doing anything fun on Thursday, enjoy your Thursday. Wait, is 4th of July on Thursday or Wednesday? I think it's on Thursday, right?
Whoops, sorry, my mic was yeah, it's Thursday. Yeah.
Okay, it's Thursday. Yeah. So for those, if you're doing anything on Thursday, whether it's baseball related or whatever, make sure you have a fun time. And of course, as always, make sure you watch the Rockies, even though it's been painful. Or at least, if you don't want to watch the Rockies, just follow us on Instagram. We'll cover you. So, but I think that will do it for today's Rockies recap. Again, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube, Instagram, Threads, all that good stuff. And because every day we post Rockies content, Rockies lineups, all the good stuff, Rockies news, and everything in between. That will do it for this Rockies recap. Have a great Sunday afternoon and a great week ahead. Tom and I will talk to you later. As always, go Rockies.